welcome everybody to the fishbowl. And I know that there are some people of you for those who it's the first fishbowl, so I'm going to explain that later. But I'm really looking forward to this kind of very dynamic way of discussion and inviting you already to be part of it. And before we actually start with everything, we get some impressions, again, by some movie, by a part of a movie, which you will see now here. So some people have to turn their necks. And then we start with the discussion.
I basically believe that we must be more intertwined as citizens of Europe, especially young people. I participate in the Erasmus program, and I think it really gives me a lot of insights about what does it mean to be European. So I think the European Union should foster all these activities, because we can now see that still a lot of difference between countries, especially at the high level, in the policies made. It's still difficult to combine all the instances of Germany, Italy, Portugal and so on. So I do believe that Italy should and other countries should push more on creating new frameworks for students and young citizens to be more together.
I think I feel more Danish than European, than belonging to an EU state, and maybe there's a counterbalance that you actually are trying to get a little bit away from that. You don't want, I don't want a United Nation or a United States of Europe.
I feel like the EU is a very close state, like a state. We don't really have our voice in it because it feels like very closed area, community. So, well, it's just we can hear and we can follow it in the media, but we kind of don't have like it's one-way communication. They communicate to us, but we can't really speak to them in a direct manner.
Okay, thank you very much for the movie. Thank you very much. It was interesting. I'm really looking forward to see more of this kind of movies from our director. And there were already some questions in this movie which kind of point to the problematics that are there with a European democracy. Maybe the one person put it right when saying kind of it's a one-way communication, so people don't feel so much able to speak to Europe and to be represented by the European level. And I guess that this gap in between the people and then this difficult institutions is one of the problems which we are going to tackle here in this discussion. But then we will also want to speak about like ways to kind of bridge this gap. For instance, the European Citizens Initiative as a new instrument and its advantages or disadvantages of it, or also then other ways like protest movements, which recently really have become kind of trendy in Europe, and we see them popping up everywhere. So I'm really happy to be here with you to discuss with you. I'm really happy to be here with our panelists. Maybe I introduce them very short. We have Jerry van Bergen. He works at the European Federation of Public Service Unions, and he was very pivotal in in the first successful European Citizens Initiative, the Right to Water, which has been submitted to the European Commission already, and it is already a success because it had some policy implications already. And we have Eduardo from Juventus Sin Futuro. I hope I pronounce that kind of well. I can say it. Well, I can say it in English. It's a Youth Without Future from Spain. This movement, which kind of came, is closely connected to the Indignados movement, where he is active and is the speaker of. We have Daniela Schwarzer from the SWP. How do I translate it? Actually,
you can call it the German Institute for International and Security Affairs.
I would call it like that. She's working in the research or like head of the research department or research unit on EU integration, and has been doing a lot of research also in Harvard, and has been also an advisor for the Polish EU presidency. So she will give us some kind of academic background for our discussion. We have Pauline from Jeff Europe. She's the president, and since 2003 she is involved in the Young European Federalists, and also works in a small town near the Belgian border in the E-Unit. And we have Jan-Philipp Albrecht, who is a member of the European Parliament, who was a young MEP, was sent to the Parliament in 2009 by the German Young Greens, and has made really his way through it, and now kind of is leading on privacy, on shaping the new law of the internet and how to govern it. And he is also very central right now in the German Greens, especially right now when they have their conference, which is happening not far from here. So he is there in the presidency, and therefore will be here for 15 minutes, and then will leave us, but will be commenting in the beginning a little bit on what is going on in the European Union. And then there is more, and there is actually you. You are all panelists, because this is a fishbowl discussion, and a fishbowl discussion works in an interesting way. You see, we're sitting in a round way here. This means we all need to speak a little bit also to our backs, but it also means that everybody should be kind of coming here and should join us. This debate is not about only listening, but really getting involved. This is about youth on the move, so you should move in here. The idea is that you can join and just sit in here and make your comment, ask your question. If somebody else has then a thought or a question, she or he will just kind of come in and tap the other person, so they will exchange, so that we really have a dynamic discussion. I think this is also needed since we had a long day, and otherwise we will not be able to follow. I wanted to speak about maybe 3 things, or in 3 rounds. The first would be kind of more generally about the state of the European democracy, then going to kind of discussing the new instruments, for instance, the ECI, the European Citizen Initiative, and then again speaking about protest movement and the necessity of what they can actually achieve and how central they are to democracy. But I wanted to start with Eduardo, because I wanted to start with kind of some reality check, and the question would be just youth without future. That seems to be
just a slogan.
That's a slogan.
I hope
but
we
maybe
have a
you
future.
can, maybe even in our conversations yesterday, you told me that the connection is to these European institutions is not that easy to be made from the young people. And so the question is, how do these young people in the movement in Spain relate to Europe, and how do they see? Do they have some connection? Does it actually has some importance to them, or what is going on in the movement?
What's going on? Good question. People in Spain, young people, doesn't trust anymore European Union. From my point of view, I think it's very critical point of view, but it's what I see in the streets. We don't, personally, I don't trust in European Union, just because the executive power and the economic power is not democratically controlled. I'm talking about European Commission and European Central Bank, and from this starting point, Parliament, for example, seems to be a joke for Spanish people, because you can see that people, more than 50% of Spanish people, do not vote for European elections because they have lost any interest and hope in what European Union can give us or help us.
Okay, and the question goes straightly to Jan. The European Parliament is a joke. He said you are in this European Parliament. And yeah, just a question, first of all, I mean, do you feel yourself also this powerless, and who is to be made responsible from a political point of view for the fact that actually there is this kind of ideas about Europe? So who do we have to address to with this? Actually, I'm angry about that people feel like this.
I completely share the emotion, and I also have to say that as the European Union or the European communities were founded, the first idea of having a parliamentary assembly and then a directly elected European Parliament was, of course, I wouldn't say a joke, but more or less window dressing. So to say that there is participation by people via some members of European Parliament, but at the end decisions are still taken by the European Commission and the European Council, so the Council of the European Union also. And I think that people felt that already since many years, and also the parliamentarians in the European Parliament felt this lack of democracy and this lack of scrutiny and legitimization of European Union's policy. And so the European Parliament used the very few powers it had throughout the last 20, 30 years to gain part by part more powers by saying, okay, if we are not allowed to agree on a law, for example, in a specific topic, then we will block another law where we have decision power on, or we block the budget, for example, which always was a very important instrument for the European Parliament to gain new powers. So I would say that latest after the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty, which is the outcome of the last convention and the draft for a European Constitution, the parliamentary power of the European Parliament and the legislative power of the European Parliament is far bigger than the decades before, which doesn't say that, of course, there are still huge loopholes also in democratic legitimacy in Europe, which is, for example, the initiative right for parliamentarians, so that we can decide, okay, people tell us do something on, for example, social security in Europe, we are not allowed to adopt a motion for a law, which then can be passed by us and by the Council of Ministers. In addition, it's quite hard for parliamentarians to create the awareness for the decisions made in the EU institutions, but it's somehow put to the parliamentarians to do that. So obviously Commission and especially Council, where the member states sit, they don't feel the need to involve citizens and involve the public and journalists in a very early stage in decision-making process, but more or less only with PR, you know. But the only ones who really are elected by the citizens are the parliamentarians, so they only are the only ones feeling somehow the situation that they need to justify what they're doing. They need to also show that they are acting on their behalf. And now comes the problem. Like, as I'm showing, European parliamentarians are doing a hell of work. They have many meetings. Like me, I have to leave. And that shows one of the problems. Let me line out that shows one of the problems. Because if there are only 750 parliamentarians out of 500 million Europeans taking care of parliamentary scrutiny and of explaining EU institutions' decisions to their voters, I think that will not work. I think everybody is clear that it cannot work. I mean, we are too far away also of many of the people out there. I cannot really make it to talk at least to 10% of these voters in my lifetime, So I think what we should really work on is a European parliamentary system where the national parliamentarians care the same about the scrutiny of EU institutions' decisions like the European parliamentarians try to do. And that would lead to the situation that, for example, decisions by the Commission or the actual felt problem with decisions by the Troika in this crisis situation would be debated in public, because the few European parliamentarians, they are not in the position, obviously, to debate or to lead debates in their member states on the question how to set the priorities on where do we spend our money. At least it's also not the responsibility of European parliamentarians to decide on how member states spend their money. So the whole thing doesn't work because it's not connected to each other. So I think that we should be quite angry about the situation because it doesn't work. When it comes to those central questions, it works where we have, for example, I would say as a lawyer, secondary legislation of the European Union, which means doing directives, for example, on consumer rights, for example. That works, But when it's about deciding on where do we spend our money on in Europe, so we all together, and where do we set priorities in our economies, how do we create social insurance, in all these decisions, it's still up to the member states to take very important decisions on European level. And those decisions, which are not co-decided by the European Parliament, in those decisions we need a better democracy, and I think it only works if we include as many people into a very fundamental debate, and I would say it should be another convention where especially social movements and young people should draft how we will decide on economy, social issues, and taxes, for example, in the future.
Thank you. I would already invite people to join us here, and because Jan has to go also, so maybe if somebody wants to ask this question, just be the first kind of to join us, because if there is once like somebody sits here, then it's really easy for everybody to get you. So come in.
Well, I have one question. Is there a possibility to bundle the voices of all those citizens, not just through election, but if we have, for example, a Volksentscheid, so a public decision on the European level, it requires a lot of organization. Would there be the possibility to use electronic tools to replace that? Is there any possibility how to bundle all these voices and their impacts and to give people power to actively join the process? Do you have an idea how we could achieve that?
Thank you very much. I think that first of all, we should all try to reach more direct democracy in Europe on all levels. I think that is an idea of also changing from an old system of democracy only built on parliaments and parties to a new system where also social movements, direct democracy plays an important role, which doesn't mean replace it, but play an important role. Then I think, but Jerry will say something on that, the European Citizens Initiative is a very good example how digital participation can take place because you can sign in the system also, and it works. If on a high security level, of course, and not open to manipulation, if there's a possibility to take part in participation and allow participation on very similar decisions, very simple decisions, which can be understood by everyone, and most decisions at the end, if they are politically, are similar to understand, then I think it's really a good idea to allow that to happen. What I wouldn't do at the moment is to, for example, have elections being done only electronically, because as you see, it's a difference to have a European parliamentarian coming everywhere and really talking and trying to campaign, instead of only having I don't know, somehow virtual or virtual environments in which you do politics. So I still would say that we need to have the human intervention in democracy. We need to have the human contact, which is very helpful to also bring over the sense of a decision at the end.
Thank you very much.
So you had a question? No? But Jerry had.
Yeah, thanks. I think Jan has identified the right problem, that there is actually in Europe two tracks. There is the European track and there is a national track. And there is an interconnection. And we know that there is, but we don't see it, we don't feel it as citizens. And citizens don't feel related to European politicians, to Europe, because it's too far away. I think that is a problem. I think the speed that Europe is going, that it is integrating, that it has created this single market, and that it's trying to form a union, is going too fast, and it's not taking people along this track. And what I see in the Netherlands, where I'm from, is that politicians can very easily play the nationalist card and saying Europe, it's a waste of money, and Europe is only imposing negative rules upon us. And to be free, we should not involve in Europe, but look at our own national problems. And everything that's from outside, which is Europe, is wrong. And this message is constantly being promoted by nationalist parties. And yeah, people are sensitive because they don't know the European politicians. They don't know that they are working hard and they're trying to do whatever they can to make Europe a more democratic Europe, a more social Europe. And yeah, that's I think that's a problem, and it can only be solved by asking more from the Europeans, and asking also the citizens who have this sense of being European to raise their voice louder, to raise their voice against these nationalist sentiments that come up every time when there is a crisis, a small one or a big one. And yeah, I think that's I think a task to all of us, and a task to the European parliamentarians as well. And yeah, and I hope that the European parliamentarians can take up this task and commit themselves to bring Europe closer to the people, because I think you are the only ones that really can do it.
But they are very few. Compared to this big task, I guess, because it's not only about them, but it's about all of us. But as you said, that it might be going too fast in Europe, and even the integration. And I was wondering, if Pauline, what do you think about this? Because I guess when coming from the federalist point of view, maybe you have a different opinion on that.
Yeah, for us, it's not going fast.
And one thing. Now, one seat gets free, so maybe somebody else can kind of replace him. Thank you, Jan, that you came here.
For us, it's not going fast enough, I would say, because we do see the situation as a lack of government and a lack of a responsible democracy in Europe. And one of the main problems for us is also the way the European election is, the European Parliament is elected. I mean, we still have a lot of national programs, not a European program. And even when for the last election there were some attempts to have European programs, and maybe here it's not the right place to say it, because if there is one European political party playing the real game of having European election, it's probably the Greens. But for the rest of the party, I mean, there was some European manifestos, but never implemented at national level, and the candidates just discuss about national topics. And then how do you want to have people feeling concerned by the election of something which is based on national topics? And there is a strong problem with the political party there. In a national democracy, you have a link which is made between citizens and parliament, which is a party. And here, if you look at how the European political party work, they don't make these links. They don't have European programs. They don't push really for European candidates, like candidates really being elected on transnational constituency. There have been some attempts to have this kind of MEPs elected on transnational constituency, but even the European Parliament refused this change of way of voting. Then we hope that with the Lisbon Treaty, the President of the Commission has to be elected, has to be nominated, taking into account the result of the election. But it doesn't mean he will be the first one of the head of the list. Still, the government have some room to choose the one they want. And that's for us a real problem. If we will make it clearer for people when they vote who they will send to the Commission, then it will bring closer the people to the Parliament. And then we were, if I can just add something also, we were discussing about a new system, and also the role of civil society is very important. And something we can't accept is the fact that there is still no statute for European association. I mean, the right of association is a basic right in all democracies. But in Europe, when you are a European NGO, you have to be registered under a national law, which is, again, something very strange. So, I mean, the whole system has to be changed, but we also have to go forward and to find new way, and also to find the right place for the civil society in this system.
Daniela, I wanted to ask you something. I mean, you do research on this, and so you might know what the people think. And I have to think that the acceptance rates of Europe, they are low, and they go lower. The turnouts in the polls and in the elections, they're low. So if we are kind of proposing some more integration, is that not kind of contributing to the wide gap between actually the reality of the people and then what is done on a European level? Or how would you bridge that? And how is Europe trying to bridge that?
Well, I think if you look at public opinion data, there's a lot of reason for concern, and at the same time there's hope. There's a lot of reason for concern because indeed support rates for like questions, do you think your country benefits from being in the EU? Those rates tend to go down, and they tend to go particularly down in those member states which are currently so-called crisis countries or almost crisis countries. And you see that those which are doing well, they still fare pretty well with regard to public opinion. This is as such no surprise. This has been the case for 50 years, basically. Whenever a country is in an economic crisis, people tend to be skeptical about European integration and about globalization. The problem we have at the moment is that the crisis is so deep and so long, and as we heard just now, there is so little hope for the younger generation that it is very difficult for Europe to make its own case. then there is the issue of satisfaction with democracy in Europe. And what we have seen for the first time in 2012, on average, more people are becoming dissatisfied with democracy in Europe than are being satisfied. For a long time, there were more people satisfied. So very, very clear warning signal to Europe, but also to the nation states, because the parallel development is happening if you ask Europeans about democracy in their own country. So that's bad news. The good news is, I think, that in the crisis, if you asked Europeans who should take care of which problem, there are very realistic ideas out there. There is a strong support for Europe to do more, and there's a strong support for global fora to do more, for instance, on financial markets, on macroeconomic developments. And this is a message that national governments need to take seriously, because citizens seem to realize earlier than that some problems can no longer be efficiently dealt with by national governments or in an intergovernmental fashion on the European level. So I think this is the message we have to look at. And we have to look at citizens' expectations, not only in those big economic and financial issues, but what is really growing is a demand for more social security in Europe. So these are topics that could be seized if we have national leaders who want to seize the topics. But they don't, as we see. And that's the next question. Why don't they? Obviously, because those are the most sensitive fields where sovereignty, in their view, is still national. I would argue they no longer have sovereignty in those issues because they cannot really influence. I mean, you can campaign for national elections promising anything you will do for unemployment, for whatever, for economic growth. But in fact, in a monetary union with integrated financial markets, your steering capacity alone is so low. And what you need to do is you need to team up. And what we are seeing right now is that Europe is no longer made for the context it has created for itself. So I think we need more closely integrated governance structures for anything related to monetary union, macroeconomic stuff, financial market integration, regulation, and so on. And we are moving slowly forward, but whenever things stall, it is because national governments still want to keep everything in their national control. And I think citizens realize that this is not going to be efficient. It doesn't deliver the output in the crisis, and it won't deliver in the future. So today, I think it is something new that is happening, is that citizens may be pro-European, but EU critical. And that is something substantially new, and I think it's important. And I would start arguing now, if you are really pro-European, you should be EU critical. And you should make that voice heard. 10 years ago, it was a taboo to be EU critical. But we have reached a new phase. The phase where Europe was built is over. We now have to govern this, what we created. So if someone tells me I don't like the EU, but I am a European, I think this is perfectly consistent.
You wanted to pose another question? And then I would also really invite other people to kind of join us here, because you are enriching this conversation. Thank you.
Do you want to begin? No. Oh. Okay, thank you very much. I was wondering, well, the European Parliament has gained strength and has gained competences, but if this process continues and the national states are lose power in the future. On the one hand, people will have to focus on the European Parliament more than on the Bundestagswahl, for example. And on the other hand, if we make from that parliament a parliament which speaks open to people, which communicates with people in the way the national politicians do. If we perhaps focus more on regions, so like our Länder or something like that, could this help form an European identity? And if we make the European Parliament something like the Parliament of the United States of Europe, could it create a more vibrant and vibrant Europe? And what are the chances and what are the risks? And would it make sense to give the Parliament more people so that one MIP represents less people from less citizens.
Did you address this question to Daniela or?
Primarily, yeah, but also to each and every other person in this round.
Okay. Maybe we can also just try to be in our answers a bit shorter, and everybody can come inside here. As for now, there was mentioned the United States of Europe, and I didn't see a lot of kind of critical questions, so I think we all agree on this. Do we? So if not, then you can come inside here and actually maybe voice your critique on this. But maybe you want to answer.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra, for your question. Big question. I think the European Parliament, well, the parliamentarians have to do one thing first before we make more of them. That is, I think they have to be more local. It's very difficult, I know, and we just heard from Jan how busy he is. But people don't know their parliamentarians in general. And many parliamentarians are more active in European expert debates than in their own constituencies. So I think this is the first thing to do. And then I think even if we had more of them, if we added 200 or so, this would only be a marginal change. What they have to do is, I think they have to communicate more politically. I mean, the fact that the European Parliament still holds press conferences as an institution is, for me, a deeply ironic thing. It's a political institution. I want to hear party groups or individuals, but I don't want to hear the institution as such. So I think getting it out more politically, getting more into battle, that's what I want to see. And I want parliamentarians to be more present, if they can, in more than one national public.
Your question was first.
Okay, it's not really a question, but rather a comment. First, to say that I really like the format, and this reminds me. So I'm a member of European Alternatives, and as such, I took part some months ago in a meeting for the European Year of Citizens, and a Commission representative was there to speak about citizenship and ways for citizens to raise their voices. And the format was really interesting. It was just a panel of people and then representatives of civil society organizations just listening to them. And this was very telling about the representations of, participation is seen only as communicating to the people. So no wonder that people don't want to participate. I mean, they go out on the streets in all over Southern Europe against austerity measures, which just go on. So there's a feeling that MEPs, or the Commission rather, is blind to their voices. And I just wanted to use the opportunity to give one example of something that we've run with European Alternatives in the last year. Which is called the Citizens Manifesto. So some of you may know it already, but we organize consultations in different parts of Europe to hear what citizens had to say on a series of topics, and made clear that there are alternatives out there. And as you rightly said, we can be pro-European and very critical of what's going on at the moment. So wishing to have a more democratic, a fairer Europe, more social justice. And so this process is coming to an end in the next weeks. And if you are still in Berlin, I would like to invite you to come next Saturday here. That we'll organize a forum, and notably around this issue. So, yep.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. So this was basically a statement, so maybe you go on with your question.
But I'm not really having a question.
Are
we people just invited your questions? I thought we were looking for solutions.
Well, come up with your solution then.
Okay, I will at least try. I'm Daniel Lanfer. I'm working for Democracy International on a campaign for a democratic convention for the European Union. So I definitely agree with Jan, and I talked to him more than once about this topic already. So this is, in a way, my solution. I think we will need to have a democratic convention, and the convention needs to be elected from people. It needs to work transparent, and it needs to have a referendum at the end of it, all over Europe, and on one day. So we will have one European debate about the solutions, and then we can decide whether there are more members of parliament in future or not. But I think this is the important thing. We need to rethink Europe. We need to restart Europe for a Europe of citizens. And for this, I don't really take care about names, whether it's called United States of Europe or European Union or whatever. I don't care about that. That's not important for me. Important for me is that we citizens have an impact to influence European politics with, for example, direct democracy.
Good. I just wanted to ask Jerry, from your experience with the ECI. I mean, now we have a lot of excitement about these new kind of measures, but it's also difficult to kind of mobilize people for Europe. Is this the way forward with this convention? Because let me play the critique here. I think we are also, dealing with a certain amount of people, but we leave some people behind. For them, Europe is kind of not a necessity in their life, or they don't feel it as a necessity. So they don't. They don't care about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, there's different aspects, and I think there's the democratic aspect, and from that point, I think. We all are in favor of a more democratic Europe, and the ECI is one tool. So it does not make Europe more democratic, not at all. But it is a tool, and I think as a tool we should use it. Otherwise, we are to blame as well for the lack of democracy in Europe. So I think that's one aspect, and. The other aspect is the way that the EU is structured right now. And I think the problem is very much within the Commission that has an approach to Europe as a market and not an approach as a society, that the Commission in itself is not a democratic institution. So I think, to come to a democratic Europe, I mean, we have to do away with this Commission completely. But that is a long way to go.
And what would substitute the Commission?
An elected European government, and I think that's where we have to go. But that's a long way. But I think that's. The European government must be a democratic government as well, and cannot be a commission that is installed by several national governments, and it has to deal with Europe as a society and not deal with Europe as a single market. So that's changes has to take place at different levels, and for citizens, we have to step up our efforts. I think what we see happening in the NGOs, in movements that's coming up, I think that helps to create a more democratic Europe, and I think that's one way to go, and the other way to go is to keep protesting or campaigning or fighting for a change in the European institutions, in the structure of Europe. That has to change as well.
You're invited to join us.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, before we go to the debate about the movement, and I just wanted to maybe let you comment just a little bit more about the disadvantages and the problems which you encountered in your campaign. But maybe Daniela wants to say something.
I just want to share a thought, because I think many of you are representatives of civil society movements and so on and so on. Now, if we want to make Europe more democratic, it means we need to take power away from the European Commission, and it also means you need to take power away from national governments. And both is very, very difficult. So the idea I like, and I actually tried to found something in that logic, but it was probably too early, it would be easier now, is to have a citizens movement, but which doesn't stay a citizens movement that understands itself as a civil society movement, but one that actually stands for parliament. so that actually goes into European parliamentary elections as a trans-European movement, and then says, look, we are here to democratize the system. We are the catalyst for change. Because I think, frankly, that policymakers only take an alternative view on Europe seriously if it is in political competition. What happens now is that many organizations have very good ideas what to do with Europe, but it's very easy for those within the system to do away with that. But as soon as you become electable, as soon as you say, I'm an alternative, and maybe I'll get into the institution, I think that would be something really great.
Okay. I wanted to give you the floor beforehand. Maybe you want to kind of propose a new party now?
Well, actually, I have a slightly different question to Eduardo. Juventud sin Futurum. Youth without future. I find this is a very strong statement, and I was wondering whether you actually think that there's no future for our generation in Europe, or what you would suggest has to change so that we are not a lost generation, but that there is some kind of hope. I would be very interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. As I say, it was just a slogan to get attention from media and all this stuff. But it's also a kind of choice. You do something, or there is no future. So I take some notes. I read some notes, thinking about what was said here, and I think I have a completely different point of view. I will try to explain myself. In Spain, and not only in Spain, but in the South Europe countries, last 5 or 4 years have been dramatic in a humanitarian and a social way. For example, I'm not laughing at you, but sometimes I wanted to laugh when we are talking about participating in Europe. I don't think like the real powers of Europe. I'm thinking about economical powers, who are the ones that are ruling Europe, if we are honest, will let us to participate. For example, 2 years ago, European Union, not European Union, but European Commission, European Central Bank, and International Monetary Funding make us to change our constitution in order to pay the debt. Before any other thing, we had to pay the debt. It doesn't care if we have to cut funding for education or for healthcare. We have to pay our debt. Another example, all these changes were proposed by the Troika in a letter they sent to our Prime Minister, and also they asked for a change in the labor market with a new labor law. The consequences have been a 57% of young unemployment rate, and 27 unemployment rate in the general population. Also, they ask us for a loan of 60,000 million euros. We Spaniards had to pay, I don't know when, in order to rescue our bank system, our financial system. Do you think that after all these examples, is there any place to debate with these factual powers? Do you think they are not laughing at us when we meet here and say, okay, let's participate, like raise our voice, while people in Spain is literally dying, and in Greece especially, because some policies that someone in Brussels said that were okay for us. That's my point of view, but I don't say that this lack of democracy in Europe is just the fault of the parliament. He has left, and I would like to say to him that it's not what I mean. But I think it's also a problem of citizens. We are not committed with politics. Maybe people who are here, we are committed, but the majority of the Spanish population is not. So my final question for us is if we are not wasting our time collecting 1 million signatures for I don't know what, while Troika is destroying everything in South Europe. That's all.
Can I react
Please,
shortly?
please,
Yeah, I think we
react to it.
fully agree with you. And the problem is that the Troika is responsible behind no one. They do whatever they want, and I mean, they are not responsible. That's why we also are very much in favor of a government replacing the Commission, being responsible in front of the Parliament, and then we can, as citizens, act and react with the next European elections. I mean, the whole system has to be changed. It's not normal. I fully agree with you that 3 people just come in your country, tell to your prime minister, do that, and not being responsible in front of anyone. So the core problem for us is really this question of system. We need a government responsible in front of the Parliament on which the citizens can act with the elections. And then you will feel part of something. You will have the possibility to express your opinion on this. And that's why also we are very much in favor of a convention. And we have submitted a petition to the Parliament to say we want a convention. And it's a pity that Jan-Philippe left, because I wanted to ask him a question. There was a decision by the Parliament this week asking for a convention, but only to change the seat of the Parliament. I'm not saying it's not important. Well, I'm French, so it's a bit difficult to discuss about this topic, but whatever. But I mean, are they really serious to decide to have a convention only for the seat of the Parliament? I mean, and it's a pity he left, but I'm going to send him an email, I think, to ask a question. I was very disappointed by this decision of the Parliament. I mean, it's not serious if you think about the problems that you just pointed out a few minutes ago.
Let me just ask this one question. I wanted, because Daniela was bringing up this kind of, we need to create this new movement for Europe, and you were kind of saying that you don't believe in it. There's just this economic powers and you cannot change it. But at least is this what is happening inside the movement in Spain, that, I mean, you don't see there's any possibility to change it? Because I think this is the core of democracy, is your belief in actually being able to change the circumstances. And if you don't believe in this anymore, that you can actually change this system or the way in what you're living, then this is agony in a way.
Okay, I'm gonna be short. The problem is people in Spain have lost all their hope in the European Union, because at first it was like a party we didn't want to miss. Like, everyone was in European Union, there was a lot of funding, so we wanted to enter there. But now there is no way out. There was a specific program to get into European Union, into Eurozone, but there is no way out. So people cannot imagine how to say in English, how to escape from this control. And what I mean is that for sure Spanish people don't believe that our government has any sovereignty. We lost it. We lost it 30 years ago once we entered in the European Union. But we only care now when we would like to do something else, but we cannot. And there is no way out. We cannot see a way out.
I would like to first give Leo the word, and then maybe Jerry.
Thank you very much. I actually wanted to say something that's pretty much related to many of these issues. Okay, I see. I wanted to say something that's related to many of these issues. I get the feeling that there's a slight disconnect between, on the one hand, apparently many of here are campaigning for a democratic convention which is supposed to yield a pan-European state. On the other hand, oh no, I see, that's much louder. Okay.
Wow.
On the other hand, we are afraid of losing sovereignty. So, I mean, if we have a pan-European state, that can only be achieved if states do not have sovereignty anymore. Also, one of the key features of a supranational, of a super state in Europe would be that representation will, of course, be more limited. So, in example, in the US, if Texas wants to invade a country, they cannot just do it, right? Because they are part of the United States, and so you have many states whose opinion cannot be taken into account, and you actually get overruled all the time. So also one other problem was the Democratic Convention. I get the impression that this Democratic Convention is supposed to override the concerns of member states who are actually opposed to a pan-European Union, or who are opposed to giving all competencies to the European Union. One of the reasons also why the Parliament does not have initiative in all the areas, but is limited to the areas in which the European Union actually has competencies. But if we do have a democratic convention, then I'd suggest, the most people in Europe are against having a pan-European superstate. So I don't really see how this is a way forward.
Do you see this?
A superstate is not a way forward. The way forward is to achieve a democratic Europe, and that's something completely different. But I would like to come back to Eduardo, because it reminds me of a debate I had about Europe a month ago, and there was a Finnish philosopher. And it was also about the lack of power, that individual citizens feel so powerless, and all the power is within the Commission. So what can citizens do? And the answer was, you have to fight. That's the only thing you can do. You have to fight, and you have to fight. And that's your only option. And I think that's right. That's the only answer, because you can't sit down in despair and being sorry with yourself that you have lost everything, you have no power, and there is 3 people in Europe, or 3 institutions in Europe that are deciding and destroying your life. The only thing you can do is fight, and a fight can be at many different levels. And our European Citizens Initiative is collecting 1 million signatures. We have done it. And you can say, well, what does it help me? Yeah, that is what many people told to us when we did this campaign. Well, what does it help me? If you do nothing, then it will not help you at all. But it is one tool, it is one means that you have to change just a little bit. It is a way of fighting to achieve a little change towards a more democratic Europe.
Sorry, may I just ask a question?
We have won at least one little battle in this big fight. That's what it is.
I mean, it's good to say it that way, and I just wanted to thank you to share your view with us and your very realistic depiction of what is actually happening in Spain. Because I think when we are discussing here, we actually forget the people and we forget what it is all about. And you brought it kind of back to mind. It is all right to say that you have to fight, and I agree with that. But what is if you are too tired or too much afraid to fight? That's what I find in my generation. People are too much afraid to say, I'm underpaid or I'm unpaid. They're too tired after kind of working in 2 jobs because it's not enough money to pay their rent. And that's something that makes me very, very angry, in a way. Because I can be angry and I can fight, but I have friends who can't, and who just stay in their underpaid jobs or unpaid internships or whatever, let themselves be told day and day again that they are not good enough and not well qualified and whatever, and that they should be grateful that at least we don't have a war anymore. And I find this very, very ironic, And I enjoy sitting here and discussing things or thinking about solutions, because I don't know any solution really, but I feel just very, very big anger kind of growing in me, and I'm not quite sure what will happen if this continues for 10 years. Or, like Eduardo said, people are literally, it's not a small issue. People are dying and people are getting sick, and I have friends who get sick from this situation because they can't find a job, they can't find a family, they get psychological ill because they just have the feeling they are not good enough or that there's no place for them in society. And I think we need to solve this as a European Union, and it's about solidarity.
Let me just also kind of just try to. You said we have to fight, and you said that it's difficult kind of to find the solution, but we need to find one. I think there is some solutions in this room here in your heads. So I would just kind of encourage you again to, if you have some ideas, just join us here in the middle, and then we continue. Let's have the statements quite short again. I would let you answer shortly, then Leo has the floor, and then Pauline again.
I agree. Of course, we are in a very comfortable position. But I think, you have to use your anger. I hope your anger is giving you energy, and I think, and I can show that fighting also can give you hope, and that's what we have seen in Spain with our European Citizens Initiative, and in Greece. We have been campaigning for a long time in Greece, and every time the answer from Greek people was, our problems are too big. This European Citizens Initiative for water, what does it help us? No, we cannot change this. We have so much bigger problems. But we kept continuing and telling to them that they should join us, because this is part of their fight. And they joined us in Greece. And they saw that they managed to collect signatures, that they managed to talk with people and convince them how important it was to keep their water services in their hands, because it was part of their struggle. I mean, it was imposed by the Troika that the Greek authorities should sell the water utilities to most likely foreign multinationals. And people didn't want that, because people know what would be the consequence, that their water bills would be much higher, and that they would be having even more problems to pay their monthly bills. So they joined our Citizens Initiative, and our Citizens Initiative gave them hope that they can change something in their life for the better. Let me just come in. But is that not a false hope? I mean, in the end, the European Citizens Initiative has, in this way, mobilized, but in kind of the institutional way, doesn't really... Definitely not. It's not a false hope. But the fight is not over. But without our Citizens Initiative, the Greek water companies would have been sold a year ago already. And they have not been sold, and they are still not being sold. And there is still a debate between the Greek government, there is still Greek citizens protesting, and there is still the European Troika that is trying to force the Greek authorities to sell it, but the Greek authorities are feeling the pressure from the citizens, and they don't want to sell. So it is a fight. And I think it depends how strong the citizens are to keep continuing this fight. But they know they have the support of 1.8 million people in Europe that are supporting the Greek. And that's giving them hope.
Thank you. Leo.
I wonder, should we go on about the water initiative, or should I just go on to the point I actually wanted to make? I would add a quick note just on the water. It appears likely that it's still going to be sold, but this time around not under the regulations that the EU was going to adopt, which would have made for a pan-European launching of the selling, so that you'd have actual competition, and the best offer would win the day, but within a probably more muddled and more corrupt process, as was seen here in Germany. For example, in Berlin, we had a referendum on whether or not to publicly disclose the conditions under which the water was privatized, and it took a referendum to find out what the conditions were. So this is the kind of corruption that you get if you don't, if you sell the water in an ad hoc way and not through the European devised mechanism, which was now withdrawn. A more general note on, we have had a lot of sort of incriminations of Brussels. It sounds always a bit populist if you say Brussels because there's so many institutions there, right? So we have these 3 people coming from Brussels who go into Spain. One of them is from Frankfurt, the ECB. The other is from Washington, the IMF. And the third is the Commission. Now, why does the Commission have such a weird stance as part of the Troika? I totally agree that they are destroying part of Southern Europe. But I'd also suggest that what they are actually doing, the rescuing, if you will, of countries, is not part of what the European institutions were supposed to do, right? It's outside of the treaties, which is why the member states had to come together and do an ad hoc solution. And I'd also suggest that member states are democratically elected, right? So this brings me to the next fundamental question. Is the European Parliament really the institution that's best suited to address the lack of democratic accountability in Europe? Because there's actually a second chamber of parliament, which is composed of member states, the Council of Europe, and it's also democratically elected, each member state. So that's actually a very normal composition. Also in Germany, we have a lower chamber and the upper chamber, and the upper chamber is composed by the executive of the federal states. So this seems to be a very democratic and plausible apparatus. And I'm not saying that the European Union should not get more competencies and be active on more areas, but I would add the final note that the European Parliament is actually also the most open door for all kinds of lobbyists. We saw that just 1 month ago with the tobacco thingy, where actually the Commission proposal was quite strong and draconic for the tobacco lobby, and the European Parliament watered it down quite considerably. So even the Council of Ministers was much more progressive on this one than the European Parliament. So are they really doing our interests? There's just not there's just not enough public scrutiny of what it is that the Council is doing, because there's always this Brussels decided this, Brussels decided that. We don't know whether the European Parliament was the good one on this thing and the member states blockaded progress. But most of the time it is member states. But if it's not in the newspapers, how can we pressure our member states to be more proactive on these policies, as in migration, etc.?
And I guess, Pauline, you know, possibly answer to this, also trying to bridge it again back to the question of how we can involve actually the people, because we now spoke about movement, we now spoke about fight, but also then on the other hand, you have to, all right. Okay, thank you very much for being here, Daniela.
It's like each time I get the microphone, someone is leaving, so I'm a bit afraid. No, I just wanted to come back quickly to the loss of sovereignty. You're right, but it's not linked to the EU. We lost sovereignty before because of the global world. And in few years, there won't be any EU country in the G20. If we want to still have a power and a word to say in the world, we have to be united. So the loss of sovereignty exists, but it's not linked directly to the EU. That was the point I wanted to stress what you say. And regarding the Council, yes, in the federal Europe we want to have 2 chambers. We want to have a chamber of member states, but with a clear mandate on the European point of view. The problem is that our head of governments now discussing in the European Council, they never report about their European policy, and they just try to get the best for them, for their own country, without taking into account the general interest of Europe. And that's the point. I mean, in a perfect system, you're fully right. But right now, the people representing the national government in the European Council or Council of Ministers, they just think what I'm going to have. And if the solution is good for them, they say it's thanks to me. And if it's bad, it's the responsibility or the mistake of Brussels. So I think, generally speaking, we fully agree. But the thing is, the system is not working well right now.
Just there is a place free, so maybe somebody else also wants to jump in. I wanted to ask you another question on this. Now, I mean, we have very good solutions. We have ideas how we build a federal Europe. We have ideas how we build a state and subsidiarity. However, as said, kind of, how do you, in Jeff, bridge it? How do you kind of, because I think one of the biggest problems in the European democracy is also its communication, to communicate it to the people. So what is your solutions there?
Thing is, we try to be in the street as much as possible to discuss with people, to say, and I fully agree with what she said before when she said we should say, yes, you're right, the EU is not working well, but it doesn't mean we are against the European idea. So we go to schools, and we have a Europas school program in some country, for example. We go to the street, we discuss with people, and we try also to make them realize that they have already some participatory tools. We have the petition to the European Parliament, for example. There was someone asking for how can I be consulted on the legislation? But the European Commission is consulting on every legislation, but people just don't know about it. And I have some example that when the Commission really took into account what the people said. So it's you're fully right, it's a question of communication. The thing is that sometimes I'm just a bit fed up when I'm meeting some politicians saying, yeah, you NGO, you have to go on the street, you have to explain people. It's also the task of the politicians, not only the one of NGOs fighting without money, whereas the politicians are paid for that.
I wanted also to thank Eduardo for his interviews in this case, and I want to take a look back on the beginning of this conference when Ivan Christoph says there that not only a crisis of the European Union we are in, it's a crisis of also the national states because of the sovereignty they don't have. And this is, in my point of view, not only a thing about the things given to the EU or the European Union coming with the Troika to the people. It's, in my point of view, also a problem about velocity. The velocity with the economic growth we have, and because of the economic growth we have to take, we have to take decisions in such a fast mode that also the parliamentarians don't know what they are deciding about in part of, or they get via the Troika some kind of fast executive steps that they have to vote. And this is, I think, the problem we have to speak about, how to synchronize, you can say, this this legislation, and also to synchronize it to the people, that the people can take it into account, also make up their mind about things, because it cannot be the thing that there has always be some idea of some people, and then we have to take a million signs that we want it another way. This is not the right way, I think.
Okay, but still the question for me is with this velocity and this instrument, we are thinking, I thought, a little bit in an instrumental way. I think also it's a little bit also about, you said it, about solidarity, but how do we actually get this solidarity in Europe, and how do we get, for instance, and Eduardo, maybe you can comment on it. For you also, as you told me yesterday, the Spanish, you said they would never think themselves as being then European. So also it's a question of kind of extending a part of your understanding of yourself to not only be Spanish, but then also be European. And in the movie, it was about the identity. This guy, he said he felt Danish. He didn't feel European. So how much do you think it is about kind of, or do you think there's a possibility for you to kind of feel in solidarity with the Greeks and extend your identity to become more European?
Yeah, for sure. I feel more solidarity. I feel more close to Greek people, those that are suffering, not those who are still living like like kings and still stealing from Greek people all their wealth. I think it's not a problem to be only Spanish but not European. I mean, I think it's a question of with a cultural background, historical background, and also about feelings, like any nationalism. And I think it's not it's not it's something about nations, but I have to say it, classes. There is an elite in Europe that controls the capital, and there is a large amount of people who are suffering, who are losing jobs and seeing how their salaries are getting shorter, because some other people are getting more money and getting richer. So coming back to your initiative, yesterday, or not to this morning, we had an interesting debate about Greece and about going out from the European Union, because it was a debate 1 or 2 years ago during this moment of the Greek crisis. And my question is, it will be easier to collect 1 million signatures every time we don't want our government to sell water, building, the Parthenon, and so on, or will it be easier, cheaper, healthier, and more effective to just get out from the European Union for Greek people? And sorry? Yeah, the problem is...
You want to sit inside here?
The problem is...
Okay, I invite you.
The problem is, elites are... In Europe, our elites are also in Spain and in Greece, and they are totally for sending everything public and getting private benefits. And we have seen it. And another question, and I'm finishing, and I don't want to be that controversial, but should we fight inside the institution game, or just abandon the institution and fighting in our own countries with our own elites and our own working class?
I mean, what would happen if we would abandon the fight against or on the European institutions and then just nationally concentrate on this?
If you leave the Europe, then you will not have any EU funding anymore, and you have been. I mean, I understand that it's difficult to hear that now, having in mind the situation in Spain, and I fully understand your point. But Spain is also getting a lot of money for regional policy and so on. You have the euro, and if tomorrow you leave Europe, you won't have euro anymore. That means you won't be able to buy anything from other countries from outside, because your money will be very weak. So for me, it's not an option for Spain to leave the EU. The situation will be even worse. But the other option shouldn't be only to use the ECI, because our European Citizen Initiative, I mean, that's something we have not mentioned because we have a successful ECI in front of us. But there have been 34 submitted ECI, 5 withdrew, I think 12 were refused by the Commission, and among the 15 others, or the 17 others, only 1 was successful. But the other one is not submitted to the Commission still for a decision. So 2, you're right. And I mean, it's very difficult. And if we are honest also among us, you manage because you had a strong organization behind them. But if you would have been like just normal citizens, let's say, you wouldn't have managed, that's for sure. So the ECI shouldn't be the only option. I mean, and again, we have the European election coming, and that we should fight toward our candidates to push for what we want and not give up now. Otherwise, I mean, it's just, we can't give up. We are too young to give up. I mean, if we give up, who will fight for our future?
Maybe you again, and all of the people who don't want to give up, maybe don't give up. I don't give up in trying to engage you.
Responding to this, I must say, you're now only coming with the funding argument. And this is the big problem about this discussion. We only talk about funding. The Spains don't have money, and afterwards, after they are out of the European Union, also have no money. So this is not the question. And this is the big thing. We have to find something else. The solidarity is there. They say they are solidary with the Greeks. They are solidary with all the other suppressed, you can say. And this is the thing I think we should concentrate on. And not on the funding and saying, okay, if you are out, then you won't get any funding. So this is a big problem.
Jerry, you want to comment on it, and then you?
Yeah. I think it's right. We're all right. I think, but there's stepping out of Europe is not a solution. I think you live in Europe. That's a reality, and you are in this union. And whether you like it or not, yes, you're in. So. What you can do is, I think, again, you have to fight, but fight at two levels. You locally or at national level, you have already made the first steps. You have organized as a movement, and you have raised your voice. So that's I think that's a good thing. That's what we have to do and what we can do. And at the same time, we should continue. To fight at the European level, and we do it with the tools we have, like the Citizens' Initiative, and through the democratic means we have. That's through the European Parliament, for example. I think that's the only way forward. And stepping out does not solve anything. And second thing about your point on the classes, I think that's very right. Because that's the problem in Europe, that you see the power is in the hands of the neoliberal ideologists, the ones who have the capital. We see it in Brussels, but you can see it around Europe. It is, for example, the big multinationals who have a very strong influence, both at national level and at European level. Just very concretely, if I want to discuss something about water with the European Commissioner, I'm not getting an appointment, even if I represent a European institution, a big European institution, 8 million members, I can say, but I don't get the appointment. If the CEO from a multinational like Suez in water wants an appointment with the European Commissioner, he gets it at the time he wants to have it. And that is the power that we have to fight. We can only change it if we fight it. If we don't fight, we will not change anything in Europe. So again, I'm back to the point I made before.
I hope there's 2 more fighters inside here. What are you?
I just want to ask about something you said about selling the water. I'm correctly, if I'm wrong, if you mean about privatization of water? Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm thinking very strongly about what the country can do in Europe if one country if strong or have to listen what the Europe said and implement some laws without any discussions. I heard the Germans reprivatization the water. So in Berlin. Okay. So my question is how they do this, because it's maybe some solutions for countries, for a country to don't agree with some
it's solution for example, for your country to don't privatizations.
How you get? I mean, you buy it back. That's, if I understand your question right, it's the question of how you get it back. But maybe the person from the Democracy International.
No, I'm totally not answering now for Democracy International. I lived till a few months ago in Hamburg, and we did a big campaign in Hamburg, and we just rebought the energy supply network. So it's in a way similar, but the only way we're successful about that was by initiating a referendum. So going out, collecting signatures, and then we have the direct democracy in Germany on the state level, not on the federal level. Still campaigning for that, but on the state level we already have it. And then we did it successfully. But now we have the problem that you cannot just say, okay, we buy it back to the state. Now the city of Hamburg needs to write it out, and then everyone can come and says, we'd like to have it. And of course, Vattenfall will still come again and says, we'd like to have our money again in future. And then you will have to find a way to figure all around this European law to get it back to the state. So it is not that easy to just say we buy it back, even if you have all the money you like to.
Okay, thank you. But I guess in the end it's always about kind of that the people join together and try to kind of get it back and mobilize for it. There's people mobilizing outside there. It is almost 7 o'clock, so I think we end soon. Daphne, you are having one of the last words. Hopefully,
okay, yeah, sorry, because I wanted to bring up something new, but it came a bit late, maybe. But no, I just want to take the opportunity, because we talked so much about the European Citizens Initiative, as European Alternatives is one of the organizations that initiated a European Citizens Initiative. I thought there's something to say on that, and because it's the European Initiative for Media Pluralism, and well, one thing to say is that it links quite nicely to the panel this morning, because Marcelina said, no one told me about the Basic Income European Initiative, for example. Her professor told her, so why are politicians not telling her about that? And I think it's the same for the Media Initiative. I think no one knows, or very people know about that so far. So obviously we have a very hard time collecting the signatures, and it shows that there has to be much more, publicity for that, and what you said before, politicians have to mobilize as well and spread the news, and it links to that. If people don't have the information, they can't participate. That's the message I think she wanted to give. So and I think it's very hard to react to what you said before, because if I say, well, we're running a European Citizens Initiative for Media Pluralism, and it has nothing to do with the reality of young people in Spain, and it seems somehow irrelevant to that topic. But I think kind of what keeps me motivated maybe is that at the end of the day, obviously it's an initiative that tries to go against concentration of media power, and that tries to foster obviously freedom of information, and it's extremely important to build democracy and to build democratic movements. If you don't have obviously that freedom of information and press freedom in countries, you can see that obviously in Hungary and in other countries, Italy and the UK, and it's a very important step, and it's an important tool, and obviously maybe it might just be a small one. It's important to recognize that. So it's one small thing to obviously mobilize for, but and it can be a huge thing obviously on a European level. If we manage to get 1 million signatures, the European Union might, it's only a might, take important steps towards that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it ends up with what Jerry said. Democracy is nothing. It's not a given, and it's something which we kind of need to achieve every day, again and again. And there is, if we don't struggle for it, then of course we will lose it. So in this regard, I hope that we will end this international conference today. Tomorrow we will continue struggling for it when we kind of go into our workshops and with the conference and think about what will be our future projects to foster, to create this maybe European sphere where we can try change something, and where we can try to communicate Europe better to the people and mobilize for Europe, because it's an important thing on which we have very important decisions to take. But for now, I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all of those of you who participated and who listened to us. And now there's nothing more left to say than also thank you to the Heinrich Böll Foundation. And there is some food downstairs. And thank you very much.